Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here today and listening into the podcast. Really appreciate you. And your listening in has helped us move to the top 10% of all podcasts, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for listening in. We appreciate you and come back again next time. Now, today, I'm talking with Elizabeth Purvis. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. She's the author of the book, The 7-Figure Goddess, Making the Leap from 6 to 7 Figures in 2 years or less. She is the premier offers and messaging strategist for high-achieving transformational leaders. And she is the creator of the 7-Figure Goddess program, where her specialty is leading experienced coaches, healers, mentors, and spiritual teachers to embody the highest level, their highest level, and scale their business on demand. I can't wait to hear about this. All right, before we go on to Elizabeth, let me say this about her. She combines her in-depth expertise in offers and messaging strategy with 2 decades of metaphysical practice to empower her clients to manifest their biggest, boldest money and lifestyle goals. Oh, I can't wait to hear more about this. And her clients say she's phenomenal and they get real world results that are unparalleled in the industry. Welcome, Elizabeth Purvis.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you so much for having me. And I want to give a shout out to everyone listening. Thank you so much for investing in yourself by listening to podcasts like this one, and just really appreciate being here and that you all are here too.
Yes, that's great. All right. So now let's just jump right in. You heard me read your bio. Tell us really in your own words about first who you are and then the work you do.
Yeah, thank you. So we can answer this question a zillion ways.
Yes, whichever one comes to mind. Whatever comes to mind first.
Whatever comes to mind. So I've been in this industry for a long time. And when I say this industry, I mean like the online coaching transformation space. I quit my job in 2007. I was a computer science. I had a master's in computer science, and I was an engineer for a decade before leaving, because I knew it wasn't what I was supposed to do. I love the building and I love the putting together of things and everything, but I knew I was supposed to be doing something else. And so I've been in this world for a really long time. And the whole time I've been here, my passion has really been kind of twofold. One is on the offers and messaging side. I was one of the first mentors to teach the high-end model all the way back in 2008 and 2009. Like I learned it from a mentor, and then, how to package and position your services in premium level programs and all of that. I love doing that because I love the value that our, coaches, healers, practitioners, transformational leaders really bring. I love helping them make extraordinary amounts of money. So that's one of my passions, because I'm very, and this kind of leads to the second thing, which is I'm very, very passionate about transformational work, what I call magic. And so my mission in life, my whole purpose is to bring magic to the mainstream, or be a part of the movement to bring magic to the mainstream. And to me, we do that by those doing transformational work, really owning that and owning the value of it, and, making huge amounts of money for the transformation that they create. And we see it now. I mean, I work with marriage counselors and trauma therapists and hypnotists and NLP people and lots of coaches, lots of business coaches. And we're, together elevating consciousness, I guess you could say. So that's really what at the end of the day, like that's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's what it's about for me. It's why I do everything I do. And the vehicle that I chose was, high-end programs and fees and offers and messaging. I've been a copywriter for a really long time. That was my first kind of gateway into this. But it's all to support high achieving coaches, leaders, practitioners, healers, really own what they do and put it out there and make a match with their highest level clients so that ultimately their work gets out and we can raise consciousness on the planet.
Yes, that sounds great. So much there to unpack. And
I know, right?
I want to say this out loud. Hopefully I'll remember to come back to this. I want to say more about the magic part of it too. But
Yeah.
before I do that, I heard you say, and it struck me, when you left your job, you said you knew it was time to go.
Yes.
Could you say more about what was happening, how you knew, or what the sense was about moving and how you got into this direction?
Oh yeah. Well, we go all the way back. I grew up in Maine in the 80s, and coaching didn't exist. None of this stuff that we do now exists. The career of my dreams didn't exist. And I was on the path of science because my dad is a chemical engineering professor. And, my whole family, my brother's a doctor. My sister is a geriatric nurse. And I was just like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, right? I have always had, like, at the end of the day, creation with a capital C is like my jam. We all have the creative desire. We all have the urge to create and expand. And at the end of the day, like, all I want to do is like make stuff. So I had a lot of conflict around that. And I found my way to computers and engineering to try to follow that urge to make stuff. And it was fantastic. I learned so much from it. The master's degree part was very challenging. I got my buns kicked. And I know, like, you've been down the PhD path, like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There's no way I would have been able to complete something like that, and I was one of those star students. I was like the top of the class, graduated number 10 and ever out of the whole school and like all of that. But I got my buns handed to me in grad school, but I got through it and I was on the engineering path. But I just knew that I was meant to be creating. I was meant to be doing something creative. And I thought, this is really interesting, I thought I was going to be a fiction writer and that I was going to be putting magic in fiction books and kind of getting the word out about magic in that way. Because when I wasn't an engineer, when I wasn't fixing computers and building networks, I was running around New York City learning magic from Western magicians.
Wow.
So I thought that was the path, but it was, and so I quit my job because, which is what you asked about, because I tend to get pushed to the absolute limit. And then I'm like, that's it, I'm out. And I really was at that point of like, which isn't super useful, by the way. It seems to be how I do it, but like, it's not the most useful thing. But I definitely was like, I kind of quit on a wing and a prayer because at a certain point, because I didn't know back then, we did not have all the resources that we have now. We did not have all the client attraction stuff. I mean, now someone can really prep to leave their job. They can replace their income on the weekends. Like, just take that in for those of you who are thinking about jumping ship. There, you have the knowledge and the mentorship is out there to replace your income. Even if you are doing 150,000, 200,000, you can replace that on the weekends, right? Like, that's possible. That wasn't the case. And so I just was like, I got to the point where I'm like, I can't do it anymore. And I pulled the plug. And what was, without kind of having a backup plan and thinking I was going to be a writer. So when I did jump ship, because I had been building all these relationships with New York Times bestselling young adult authors in the sci-fi fantasy world, and in the comics industry. There's a huge comics arm of the comics industry in New York City, and that's where I thought I was going to be. But then I found this world at its very, very beginnings. And I was like, holy, and oh my goodness, there's all this cognitive dissonance because I'm like, wait a minute, like, marketing is my thing. And I just kept saying yes, because I was like, okay, clearly I'm on a path here, but it was very, very hard. So lots to unpack there too, but it was very much like a saying yes to what I say, saying yes to what's being asked.
Yeah.
Right? You're asking and you're impressing the field, as I like to say, you're putting that vibration of here's what I'm choosing into the field. And then the field is going to give you things in response to that. And it's usually an asking to take a move. And so she was like, go learn marketing from these marketing direct response copy dudes. I was like, you're kidding me. But that I just kept saying yes to it. And ultimately let me here.
I love that. And so this is the last question I'll ask about that particular thing.
Sure. I know. It's like,
was it that the job was just getting to the point where it was not bearable or was it that you were just being pulled to create in a different way? Like, was your passion pulling you, or was there a pain of?
Oh, it was passion play. It was the pain that was created by not following my path.
Ooh.
Right. So when we know we have a path and we need to follow it, if we're not saying yes to it, a lot of pain is created. Tremendous amount of pain is created. Because by that time, I was working with incredible people. So the last job I had was with a company called Community Connect, which created Black Planet, Nihente, and Asian Avenue. I built the Black Planet network back in the day, and the Asian, was part of that team, right? I was not the mastermind, but like I was part of that team. And it was an incredible job. And it was incredible humans, and just I loved the people so much. But I knew it wasn't my path. And then it was so you're coming into work when it's not your path, and there's this huge record scratch. And that was what was really hard. And that's the hardest piece about it. And what's interesting, it's cool that you're asking me this, is that I've had the same, I remember there were periods of time where I'm like, I don't think I can get out of bed in the morning. I mean, I could, I was never depressed, but it was like, if I had to be here one more minute, right? And what's interesting, and some of that is my tendency to push things to the break point, right? As I was saying before, but that's happened in my business too, because a program is no longer aligned, a path is no longer aligned. It's like something has to change about this, and we can feel it because we can feel that pain of not being in alignment.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were kind of tuned into it early on. Even then, you're just kind of aware, had a sense of it.
I did. And I also I just didn't know what to do. And I remember, as I said, I was a part of the comics industry. So I had all kinds of these comics industry friends. My husband is a comics artist. And I was dating, before meeting Leland, my husband, one of the top comics writers in the industry. So there's this whole network of creative people around me who were getting paid and doing it for a living. And of course, on top of that, I had all the fears of will anyone like my stuff? And the barrier to entry in comics back then was so low. It was really, if you create something and build your audience for it, all is possible. Right. But I was way in the self-doubt big time. And when I decided to quit my job, I'm sitting here going to the SBA and I'm trying to figure it out. And one of my husband's name is Leland, and one of his friends is a guy named Simon, who's British and, has done all this stuff for 2000 AD and everything. And we were sitting there and he was like, Elizabeth, and he's got this Scottish brogue. He's like, dude, you just have to just pull the plug. You're trying to figure it out. You're all in your head. You're just trust yourself to figure it out as you go. And that was, something I've come back to over and over again, because we can sit here and do this loop-de-loop and try to have all the plates are spinning and you're trying to, control it all, when really you have to just be you have to have faith in yourself and faith that the field and creative substance, source, God, goddess, whatever name you have for it, is going to operate in a way that supports you.
Yeah. And you did it apparently.
Yeah. I have to say, I love what I do. And I'm at this moment, I have been in a 3-year major transformation as I exit out of 7-figure coach mode and into, turning what we're creating into a multi-million-dollar thing that can help a lot more people. And that's been not an easy path. Not at all, with lots of screw ups and lots of like bumps in the road. And I just always come back to like, this is what you want to do. Like, this is what you said yes to, and you still say yes to it, you
Mm.
know?
That sounds
Yeah.
that sounds like a strategy that might be helpful for others, anybody who's going through any bump in the road. It
Yeah.
sounds like you get yourself back on track when you hit the bumps. So,
Yeah. And it's funny because there's a couple things that I do. And then there was one thing that was useful for a while and then has been no longer useful. So when I was growing up, I was a competitive figure skater. That was another little
oh,
piece of my background.
you are fascinating.
Thank you. I can talk about this stuff much. But every 6 months, so that's a whole other world. And it was very challenging for me for a whole bunch of reasons. But I loved it. I love being on the ice. I love to skate. I love the feeling of skating. I love the way it made me feel in my body. I love the success of it. I loved going to the post office as an 8-year-old and people would recognize me in my little Maine town,
Oh,
Yeah. But every 6 months, my parents would be like, say the word and it's done. Say the word and it's over. In other words, what they were saying to me was like, you get to choose and don't feel like you have to stay on this path. Do you still want to do it? Is the question they would ask me, is do you still want to do it? If you do, we're just checking in, we're taking a pulse, And I also, and I
good for
still
them though.
say, oh yeah, it was really
That's a
amazing.
gift.
There's a lot, again, huge conversation we could have there. There was all kinds of like, there was dance mom. I knew a lot of dance moms. And they were always like, listen, you're not doing this for us. Like, we're not getting our needs met from this thing that you're doing, which was really helpful for me to hear.
Yes.
And so I use the same sort of litmus test, and it's only been recently. It's so funny because I'm on the path now. And one of my friends and mentors and the woman who helped me write my book, her name is Angela Loria. She's like, okay, put the question on pause. Like, you're doing it. You said yes to it. You don't need to backtrack. Full steam ahead, So like anything in coaching, it's like, when's the question useful when it's not? But what I think is useful about kind of both sides of that is that you really are at choice and we can choose, and I've had to say to myself in the current transformation that we're in that like, I can have fun in this transformation. I can choose to see it in this way or that way, or I can choose to focus on the stuff that's a pain in my bananas.
Mm-hmm.
What's it going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the start of you talked about your book. What
Yeah.
led you to the book? Well, I mean, you said you have to make things, so I'm sure that's part of the impulse. But what else drove you to the point of? Sounds like you were doing the work and you were doing it well for a while. And so, how the book?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. It's funny how these all unfold beautifully, right? Like so when I started out, I came in knee high to a grasshopper. I had no marketing experience. I had no coaching experience. I didn't know what the Friginator as a coach was or what they did. I saw coaching in action and I was like, holy smokies, that's magic, right? Because it's all perspective shifting. And magic ultimately is changing your awareness to open up possibilities that are there, but you didn't see before, right? And but I didn't know any of that going in, and I really had to learn my chops along the way. So I started out, and I was just like, I'm just going to be of service. So I started out teaching marketing to metaphysicians, and I would take a tarot reader from $1,000 a month to $4,000 a month, and they'd be like, "Oh my God," right? But I started working with people who are new and emerging because I was learning that skill set, and figuring out kind of how I wanted to teach magic too. But I got to the limits of that. So you're like, how did the book came to be? Like, I got to the limits of that, and I ended up shutting down my old program. Like, I built a $1 million business with serving beginners, and then I did hit that point where like I can't get out of bed in the morning. I literally cannot do this anymore. it's not working for me. I know I'm supposed to be, you know, being the magic teacher now. That's what I thought. So I spent 3 years really developing our metaphysics, our metaphysical kind of line of thinking, I guess you could say. But what I didn't count on is how much I missed the business coaching. What I didn't count on was how, like, because I had this manifesting course, and it was like hardcore manifesting for ambitious leaders, right? And I was so bored, right? I was just like, what the fudginators is this? Like, I don't want to build this funnel. I don't want to like spend my life putting people in $1,000 course. That's not what I'm here to do. So I didn't shut that down completely, but I was like, okay. And I had other kind of constraints, but I'm like, if I'm going to teach high end now, what's it going to be? Like, how do I do this my way? And the answer that came at that time was teach people how to offer 50K programs. You know, I mentored my first person to $100,000 year-long coaching program in 2011. And I was always being asked to show how to, even though I don't do 50K, 100K private coaching. Well, I do when I do private, obviously, but it's like, that's not I'm much better. I love to do the groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people are like, you need to teach how to really in integrity charge these big fees. I'm like, okay. So I said yes to that. And then I discovered that all of the rabbit holes that people would go down, all of the mindset stuff, all of the doubt, all of the fear, all of the allegiance to the previous community, I didn't know all the rabbit holes until I was teaching it for like a year. But very quickly, I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to be able to help people in the most efficient way possible instantly shift into being the version of them that charges $50,000. And I need to be able to do that without a bunch of inner work. No shade to inner work. They got to do their inner work. Most of them are doing their inner work, but it's got to be something that works on the level of conscious awareness and perception. It's got to actually come from your neocortex, which is very different than what a lot of people are teaching and saying and doing and everything. And I'm always like quick to make sure to point that out, because it's not about like clearing every block. And you do need to clear some blocks, like if you haven't cleared blocks, right? But that's how what came into the book came to be. And I downloaded the system in the book, and everyone was like, holy crap, this needs to be a book. This needs to be a book. This is like your body of work, all of the things. So I have a very big vision, and I have lots of pieces to the vision. And I had to get the business coaching stuff sorted. And I was kind of hiding out from writing the book. But they sort of put a deadline on it. I was like, by age 50, you're not getting to age 50 without having written this book. You're just not. Like, that's just how it is. And so when the time came, it was like, now it's time to do it. And so I just kind of dropped everything and did it.
Well, good for you for doing it, because I'm sure it sounds like it's a tremendous help to all the people who have been impacted by the work that you're doing. And the book helps you do that even more.
Yeah, it really has like the nuts and bolts of how we help people quickly shift their frequency and how they show up. And what I discovered along the way is that it really is like of how to embody and be the 7-figure transformational leader. Like, even if you don't want to make 7 figures, there's a lot of use to being that version of you. What it really does is help eliminate a lot of what I call the inner friction, right? You're sitting there on you're doing your thing, because this is what people don't talk about. Like, every day it's a new thing in your field, right? You get the back out email, you get the team member who's not, doing what you want them to be doing. And you have to confront the fact that like, you're not leading them properly. Or someone says something about you on Facebook, or you see someone copying you on Facebook, or you don't have time to do the marketing, and then you have to shake the money stick. Like, there's a zillion things that come up in the day to day when we truly are embodying the energy signature and the way of showing up of the 7-figure leader, then so many, I mean, there's a whole different set of options that open up to you. And you can, and also because a big part of what's in the book is remembering truth with a capital T, like spiritual truth. A lot of the doubts and fears and stuff that we run into, not everything, because we don't want to get into bypass land, right? Like circumstances on the physical plane are real, right? We're not going to say they're not, because that's a load of crap. But when we align with spiritual truth and remember spiritual truth, then we remember that the truth is abundance. We remember that thou art goddess, and so is everybody else. We remember that when we have a desire, the way for it to already be made manifest is already here. If we want clients, they're here. If we're choosing XYZ, it's already done. And when we really, really take those truths on and really accept them as true, as spiritual truth, then a lot of the stuff all the stuff on the inside, a lot of it starts to very quickly unpack.
Okay, so in that vein, this podcast, and we talked a little bit about this before, this podcast is for what I call high achieving women. In other words, women who are professionals, business owners, responsible on their work, in their business, responsible in their personal life. People come to them in both realms, professionally and personally, supporting everybody. I was like, who supports them? Right. So I thought the podcast, we can bring them together and support each other.
Yes.
To each other and the guests from their various areas of expertise. And then in this season, I added on, and they also have written a book like you. So I want you to speak to that author part, right? Because they might not even identify as an author because they're doing all the things, but they do have the book and they publish the book, so they are an author.
Yeah.
And so that author self, either to getting the message out, the feeling of getting the message out, promoting it further, anything that, I know you're kind of saying it's not about limiting beliefs. I'm just giving you some examples of anything you can speak to in that role of author.
Oh, sure. Like anything that would be super supportive of authors.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me tune in here. Well, the question I always ask is, what's the outcome you want to create? With your authors, what's the outcome that they want to create, would you say?
Let's say they want to get their message out beyond the book and make a bigger difference in the world, a positive difference.
Yeah. Beyond the work. Yeah. Or beyond the book and make a bigger difference in the world. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we write the books, right? It's like, we want to get the message out and we want to touch a lot of people. So I will start with what's the outcome. And then I've got more, but the first, and that's always the place I start, right? The desire with a capital D, we all have in us desire with a capital D, which is the urge for more life, more self-expression. There's something in you that wants to be created, expressed. You didn't write the book by accident. It's not an accident that you wrote the book. It happened for a reason. It's because you said yes to the desire and the calling. And there's something else there. There's like a bigger picture, vision, mission that you want as a result. And so that's always where we want to start, because that's like the most pure place, right? At the end of the day, it's like all of the stuff and the things and the static and the this and the that and the whatevers and the hoo-has, like we can jump out of that by asking ourselves, well, wait, what's the outcome? What's the outcome of this? And we can get aligned again with like our why and our mission and like what the fudginators it's all for, by being really clear on the outcome and the why. So the very first thing that I would really encourage each of our authors listening to do is ask themselves that question. If you haven't asked yourself that question in a while, I really invite you. And it's a hard question. It's not an easy question. It's a confronting question. It's why a lot of us don't ask it. We also don't ask it because we're conditioned to not ask it.
That's true. Yeah,
we're conditioned to not want anything.
Right.
But, and that sets up all this inner conflict, because guess what? Your neocortex, which is connected to the heavens, wants things. And you have inside you, everything has the urge for more life. That's rule number one, or law, universal truth number one. So whatever your desire to write the book is pointing you toward, like, let's figure out what that is. And then when you know what that is, the next piece, and this is like kind of my core message in life. Like if I could just impart, if I could stand on the mountaintop and talk to everyone on the planet, what I would say to them is everything that you desire is already here. You cannot like whatever that picture is of in your mind. And it does have to be coming from the truth part of you, right? It's like, you can't be like, yeah, I'm 80 and I want to be a gymnast and I'm testing the universe. Like, no, we're not doing that game. We're not playing that game. Like, what is it you really want? Right.
So you're saying something that's reasonably attainable with what we know.
I was using the no, because if there was actually an 80-year-old who really wanted to be a gymnast, if that was the true desire of her heart, there'd be a way to do it. What I'm saying is we want to come from that place of like, what's really true for you? What's really true for you? Whatever capital D desire you're tapping into, if you have that, if that desire is present, the way for it to be made manifest is already here too. So to take it back to my, just to give some context, it's like, if you want to create a 50K program to go with your book, the person who wants that program is already here. And not only are they already here, they're in your field already. They're waiting for you, right? If you want to turn your book into a platform, if you want to create a platform, if like the book is, what's in the book is part one of a much bigger arc, those people that want all that is already here. They're already here. They're already here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful.
And it's the truth.
It is.
It's the law of polarity. I always say, like, I'm not making this up. Like it's actually, it's actually spiritual truth with a capital T. And so because I'm an engineer, back when I downloaded my initial sort of manifesting teachings, I put everything through the ringer. I put everything through the ringer in my own due diligence. And, where are these ideas and where do they come from and why should I believe them and that whole thing? And ultimately we have to decide where we stand. We have to say we're either going to believe and accept spiritual truth as truth or not. And that's a whole other thing. But I couldn't find any evidence against it. So that's really, really powerful. And that cuts through a lot of shenanigans on the inside. When we really go back to what do we want and why are we doing this? What's the bigger reason? What's the reason that is put in us by the divine? Because our desires are not there by accident.
Right. It's interesting that you say that. I just said that to somebody about an hour ago.
Yay! We love how that works.
Just about an hour ago.
And it's like, so that's what I would say to our authors. It's like, what do you really want? I would invite you to really, what's your vision for the book? What's your vision for your life? What's your bigger vision? And go ahead and ask for more while you're at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ask for more.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So, the podcast is Leadership Purpose. Do you think it's important for people to have a sense of purpose in their work, their book, their life, their business, whatever they're doing?
I love that question. And I've always been purpose driven. Always. I always have. It's never not been there. And I see the ego aspect of it. I see the nobility of wanting to help, 1,000 magicians make 5-6 figures, like, which is the kind of the guardrails I put on or the frame I put on it. And I can just say that it's always driven me. And I also see the shadow side of it. There's a lot of shadow side to that too. And what I think is important more than purpose is desire with a capital D, right? I think more than purpose, because we have a lot of unpacking and a lot of undoing and a lot of like systemic crap that needs to go. That's all wrapped up in that. And at the same time, you know what? We all have the urge for more life. I will never, ever apologize for being crazy ambitious. And I get really grumpy with people who are like, you need to not like, who kind of dismiss it or for whatever reason, kind of try to dull that in me. But I'm like, yeah, I've got all of the isms and all of the problems and all of the blind spots and all of the stuff. I've got all of it. And underneath all that, I have desire with a capital D.
Yes.
And part of my job as a human is to try to like navigate those things as best I can and as true as I can and with harm to none and for the good of all. And
Yes.
that's a messy process. So I don't know if purpose is required so much, but like, because purpose has so many things. I will say that for my own personal self, I believe we do come in here with a purpose. I believe we do say yes to the assignment before we're brought here. I believe that, we end up where we end up in part due to what happened in past lifetimes and what we're here, the arc of our soul's journey. Like for my own personal self, it's a big part of my worldview. And it's not necessarily a part of everyone's worldview, but what I can't argue with is desire with a capital D and the urge for more life. That's just there,
That's it. Desire with a capital D.
Yeah. Which is like, what do you really want? What's your soul wanting you to do?
Yes.
And we don't have to put the purpose frame on it. We don't have to turn purpose into a project or whatever. But we're all invited to pay attention to desire with a capital D and to follow it where it leads.
Speaking of follow it where it leads, I'm imagining people are listening to you right now saying, how can I get more of this? And you and I get this feeling you and I could just be talking forever and ever. And I know we don't.
I know we can. It's been such a beautiful conversation. And I just so appreciate what you do. And I appreciate all your listeners. So, yeah.
So where can they get more from you if they're thinking, I'm thinking about this desire with a capital D? How can they reach you?
Yeah. So first of all, website is sevenfiguregoddess.com. And everyone can go over there. And it's a redirect currently to femininemagic.com. Like Feminine Magic is like our brand for the metaphysics side of things. And I talk about both basically, and we just haven't moved the website over to Seven Figure Goddess, but you can go either one. You'll find all of our stuff there. And then the book is a fantastic place to start to get the philosophy, so to speak.
Yeah.
I didn't like talk about kind of like the framework in the book is really powerful. So you can get it for free. It's over at sevenfiguregoddessbook.com.
Okay. And we'll be sure to put those in the show notes. Elizabeth,
that's number seven figure goddess book.
Number 7, 7-figure goddess. All right. You have been generous with your time and your energy. Your passion is coming through. It's been a joy to have this conversation. Thank you for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, everyone. And if you want to hear more from me, you can reach me on my website, robinlowens.com, robinlowens.com. And if you have a book and you wanted to get it out there and make a bigger difference with a course, and you've been thinking about it for a while or thinking about creating a course, head on over to my other website, createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com, and you'll find my free training that will get you on your way. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.